It's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hockey News Big Show. As always, I'm your host, Katie Gaus, joined by my co-hosts, Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy. And guys, we have officially reached the under 20 games left mark of the regular season. It is crazy to think that we are this close to really talking about playoffs. So starting every Friday from now until the end of the regular season and then maybe beyond, we're going to give you our top 8 contenders list. And guys, this isn't just who the best team is at that moment. This is all about the best contender when you think about the big picture, the playoff picture. So in order to keep this really honest, I had each of you guys send me your list separately. That way we can really be surprised and have some good discussions and debates. So this week we are going to start off with Ryan's list. I'll give you a chance to explain your logic. Then Michael will get your list in the mix and we'll get started with some of these differences. But all right, so Ryan's top 8. Number 8, Toronto. Number 7, Washington. Number 6, Edmonton. 5 is Winnipeg. 4 is Vegas. 3 is Colorado, 2 is Dallas, and number 1 is Florida. So, Michael, I know you've got lots you're going to want to say, but let's start with you, Ryan. Give us your thoughts, your logic, some of the key points to your top 8.
Yeah, so, I mean, starting with Florida at number 1, like, I'm looking at who is built best for the playoffs and who is sort of in a good position. That's why I went with the Panthers, because right now they're leading their division. So they would get a wild card team. I love their additions at the deadline. They're playing very well, and they're not even at full strength. Obviously, they're missing Aaron Ekblad, and then Brad Marchand. They're going to add him. Matthew Tkachuk has been on the shelf.
Big one.
And Florida has the experience, and they're not actually going to be even that tired because you have guys that have missed time or have joined the team. So I think they're in a good position. Otherwise, like my next few teams, I went pretty West heavy simply because the West is very top heavy. And, Dallas and Colorado are probably going to play in the first round.
Right.
But whoever comes out of that series, I could see winning the Stanley Cup. I mean, Vegas and Edmonton, they're probably not going to meet in the first round. It's probably going to be Edmonton, LA, but that could be a second round matchup. But at the same time, I have a lot of faith in either of those squads to go pretty deep, like especially if the Oilers get some good goaltending, which we have seen from Stuart Skinner in the past. And then, in the East, there are teams where, Washington's pretty strong. Their path is pretty easy. Toronto, I just think I need to see them put it all together. And there are questions about, is Austin Matthews 100%? It doesn't seem like he is. But what's the strategy to make sure that he's ready for the postseason? So there's a little bit of a wait and see for me when it comes to Toronto. And then, of course, Winnipeg, the other team that I haven't mentioned, their first round, they're going to get a wild card team, but then they have to play a battle-tested either Dallas or Colorado. Now, is that an advantage for the Jets, or is it a disadvantage if the Jets end up winning their first series in 5 and all of a sudden they have to kick things up an entirely different level against a team that's prepared for that? Hard to say. Also, what is Connor Hellebuyck in the playoffs? We've seen both versions, and I think, there is a question out there as to which one will show up.
I like it. All right, we're going to go right into Michael's list.
Hold on. I forgot to put Vegas on my list. So. Take out Carolina, put Vegas. And I'll I'll rejig the order, but
there you go.
All right, we will scratch that, replace it. Okay, so we've got Vegas somewhere in the mix. You had Carolina at 8, so we're gonna swap in Vegas. Then you had Edmonton.
You know what? After Winnipeg, put Vegas, and then slide everyone down. Let's do that.
Perfect. All right, so we've got Edmonton at 8, Tampa Bay at 7, Vegas at 6, Winnipeg at 5. Toronto at 4, Colorado at 3, Dallas at 2, and Florida at 1. So we definitely see some similarities between you guys with those top 3 teams, even in that 4. But okay, obviously the big difference, there's Toronto. But give us your breakdown. What do you like about your list? What don't you like about Ryan's list?
Yeah, the one omission you're going to see on my list is I don't have Washington in my top 8.
Yeah.
And I really, and I think I've said this already, I see them as first round fodder. I'm just not a big believer of the Caps. And, kudos to them. Like, they've put it all together this year. And with or without Alex Ovechkin, they've just been a juggernaut, and they've really run away with the division. That being said, like, how many times do we see the number 1 seed just go down in the first round? It's like you almost expect one of the number 1 seeds to go out. And, if you're going to be playing a wildcard team, that could be Columbus, could be Ottawa, it could be even, a Boston. That's where I see like some worry with Washington. I'm just not a big believer. Like, I don't think that regular season success will translate to the playoffs. But, like Ryan, I've got Florida, Dallas, Colorado basically as my top 3. I think the reason I've got Toronto is eventually they're going to have to put it together. And this year, I think they've got the best chance out of any year that we've seen the Leafs, just because their defense is so much better. Their goaltending has really been great, minus this past few games where it hasn't looked great. But, aside from that, Edmonton, I've got pretty far down the list. Tampa Bay is still my wild card team, where
I like that one.
If they end up beating Toronto in the first round, which is what it looks like, I could see them being just a dangerous out. Just with Vasilevsky's really turned it on lately, and they've got all the pieces there.
Yeah. Here's a question for you guys, because between your lists and what I've been hearing kind of around the social media world feels like people want to put Winnipeg higher, but because of what happened with Colorado last year, they're all just afraid to. Like, it's like they have everything and they are good, and that it does feel like they aren't just kind of like a Washington where you feel like the regular season success won't translate. But it just feels like everyone is afraid. Is that sort of the sense that you guys have, is just because of last season, that series, and just the unprovenness? Maybe they haven't earned your trust.
Yeah, they're almost like the Toronto Maple Leafs of the West.
Yeah. And it's weird. Like, even like, I know like some writers in Winnipeg have said like, I just don't, I'm just not feeling them. And it's not a tangible thing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it is the remnants of that playoff loss last year, because you look at the roster and you look at some of the weapons they have, and they didn't make a lot of splashy moves at the deadline, but they made some very precise moves that I thought were very good. So I'm almost like trying to go contrarian, where it's like, why not the Jets? Like, if they have everything, like, it doesn't feel like they're doing it with smoke and mirrors. So I am kind of curious, but then it's hard because you look at Dallas and Colorado, and they were splashy at the deadline. And it's like, okay, well, those teams got a lot better, especially the Avs. So it's hard to say, did Winnipeg do enough, because they didn't need to do much in the first place.
No,
but it is also tough to ignore the Stars and the Avs.
Well, here's one for you, because again, part of this discussion about contenders is that there are external factors that can make a huge difference. One of those biggest ones in terms of how good Dallas really is Miro Heiskanen being healthy and being available. Of course, we all are hoping and expecting him to be ready for the playoffs, but how much does that change where you would have them on this list?
Yeah, if Heiskanen's not healthy, I don't feel the same way I do about Dallas.
Right.
Simply put, like, that's like taking a Cale Makar off Colorado. Like,
totally.
Miro's so important to the back end and also to the offense to a degree. Like, that being said, Dallas doesn't look any worse for wear these days. Like, Rantanen, I don't think he is just fit in on that roster like so perfectly.
Totally different than the Carolina experience.
Yeah, in a couple games, he's basically exceeded what he was hoping to do, or what Carolina was hoping to do after acquiring him. So, yeah, it goes to show, like, a happy player gets happy results. But even, that being said, like, they do need Heiskanen. If they're going to go deep, if they're going to, reach the Stanley Cup final, you have to imagine that Heiskanen is healthy. And if he's not, that is a game changer in my mind.
Yeah,
I agree.
Especially because they're not going to have like an easy first round, right? Like, we know, barring something completely unforeseen, that they're going to have to play Colorado.
It's so their hardest round.
Yeah, it's probably going to be their hardest round. So it's not like they can ease in with like a wild card team that just kind of limped to the finish.
Yeah.
I will say, like, in Heiskanen's absence, Thomas Harley has become incredible.
Mhm.
So that's positive. But
Yeah.
I agree with Mike. I mean, you want Heiskanen out there for like 26 minutes a game in the postseason.
I like it, guys. Very good discussion. So every Friday we will continue this. We have a lot of other teams that I think still have some interesting conversations swirling around them, and so each week we'll see where they stand. Edmonton is another one that I think is very puzzling for a lot of people right now, and
Mhm.
kind of they're all over the board on different lists. So we'll keep that conversation going. But the top 8 will certainly be a staple for the rest of our Fridays. All right, let's talk a little bit about some matchups. Though we've mentioned a bit about the different paths that teams have to take throughout the playoffs. So which divisions teams do we feel like are just going to be beat up by the time they do make it to their conference final? And how much of a factor is that going to play for their opponent?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah, like I know the Atlantic is the easy answer because no one wants to play Florida, and whoever
Yeah.
plays the Panthers are just gonna run through the ringer, whether it's Kachuk, Bennett, or now Marchand. It's a tough team, but for me, it's the Central. It's
Okay.
just forget about the physicality. It's just gonna be tough hockey, and I imagine like every series I could see going the distance or just
Mhm.
being something where it is really a war of attrition. So, we talked about those 3 teams, Dallas, Winnipeg, and Colorado. Add to that mix, the Minnesota Wild, which I don't
Right.
think enough people are really talking about these days. And it does become, I feel like that is the toughest division right now. I think it's kind of taken over the Atlantic when you just talk about there's no weak teams,
Yeah.
and those top 4 teams are probably 3 of the top 4 teams in the league in my mind.
And then you let the Pacific Division sit back and watch, because then the Central is doing your own dirty work for you, right? I mean, if you can get through in 5 games, even, like, you're in a great spot, feeling good and rested. All right, Ryan, what do you kind of see in terms of which division just is going to be a total slog to get through?
yeah, I'll go with the easy answer. I'll go with the Atlantic. And I think
Not
it is
wrong.
because of, a lot of the physicality and the heaviness
Yeah.
of those teams. Something to consider is like, what if we get a Florida Ottawa first round
Oh
series,
boy.
right? Like,
Ooh,
yeah,
love
so
that.
we talked about how
Kachuk
hard it is to
battle.
play against the Panthers. But what about playing against Brady Kachuk? Like, that's not a walk in the park either. That would be pretty fun
Yeah.
to get an all Kachuk first round series. But then you look at Toronto and Tampa, and Toronto is known for their skill guys, but they're a very heavy team.
Mhm.
And they only got heavier at the deadline. With Brandon Carlo, Scott Laughton's not fun to play against.
Mm-mm.
We saw Max Domi just last night fill in Nate Schmidt, who's not obviously a heavyweight, but
It's a good battle.
that's what you're in for. And then
Yeah.
Tampa Bay, we know historically, like, they stick up for each other no matter what. If
Mhm.
you get into a scrum with one member of the Bolts, you're getting into a scrum with all 5 of them.
Mhm.
6 if it's in the defensive zone. So I think, if you look at a Toronto Tampa series, like, they're very familiar with each other, especially in the postseason.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of post whistle shenanigans. And then whoever emerges from that is likely going to play a Florida team that, famously is very hard to play against. So I think the Atlantic, it's still going to be a lot of bumps and bruises for whoever gets to the conference final.
Yeah, it kind of circles back to our earlier conversation, and it's the one reason that I've been hesitant to totally write off the Washington Capitals, not because I necessarily believe in their playoff build, but because of them being in the Metro. And if they can,
Mhm.
if they can get a good wild card matchup, which remains to be seen, it could actually be a sneaky challenge. But then I just feel like it's such an easy path compared to everyone else, that they're just going to show up not dead, and that'll
Yeah.
be half the battle, is just not having to worry about being beat up by all these other ones. But Michael, I like what you said about the Kachuk potential. I mean, I would love to see an Ottawa, Florida in the first round. And that would certainly not be a reward by any stretch, I don't think, especially with the way Olmark has been playing. All right, how
Yeah.
about this? Which current playoff team is in the most danger right now down the stretch? It could be getting knocked out into a wild card spot. It could be not winning, getting a worse matchup. Which team are you pretty worried about at this point?
I don't like the way that Edmonton's playing right now, and they lose to Jersey last night, and that's a New Jersey team that is, without Siegenthaler, without Jack Hughes, without Dougie Hamilton, like
Yep.
missing some key players. And Edmonton's goaltending has just been atrocious right now. Like they really, they probably needed an upgrade at the deadline, and I wonder if that's going to be the big kind of mistake, is not going out there and getting a John Gibson or someone of that stature. But the one saving grace is they have a sizable lead on that wild card spot. But you look at their schedule, and they're going to play the 2 New York teams coming up, and then after that, I do believe that they've got some tougher matchups, like whether it's against Utah, whether against Winnipeg, I think, is also on the slate. So, we could see something where Edmonton does drop down to a wild card spot. And if that's the case, like forget about, matching up against the LA Kings. Imagine Edmonton going up against maybe a Winnipeg or, a team of that ilk in the first round.
Vegas.
Vegas.
Right.
Yeah, that would just be disastrous if you're an Oilers fan.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, I'm going to go with New Jersey. And, Michael, you mentioned the injuries that the Devils have, and those injuries are not getting any better. We know Hughes is not coming back, and Hamilton's not going to be back for the regular season, maybe longer.
Still got Cody Glass, though.
They do have Cody Glass.
Right.
There's not much of a worry of them dropping to the wild card. They have enough distance, but, they're kind of locked into playing Carolina in the first round, and they're not going to get, the risk is that they won't have home ice advantage, that they won't be able to, usurp the Canes. And I just feel like, unfortunately, with those injuries, they could be a team that's first round fodder. And Katie, to your point, about the Metro, where, Carolina's not as good as they were 2 months ago. So, I mean, one of those teams is going to win, and congratulations to that. But then Washington will play them. And it does sort of feel like, the X factor would be if the Rangers got a wild card spot and completely upended the division, because I could see that happening with Shesterkin, Panarin, Adam Fox, JT Miller. But I do worry about the Devils, and, is this season in jeopardy because of the injuries?
Is there a team that you don't want to play in the playoffs? Like when I'm looking at Carolina regular season versus Carolina playoff, it is night and day. And Rod Brindamore is already basically coaching them like a playoff team, for 82 games. But, that could be just, a tough out. And if I'm New Jersey, I don't want to play Carolina because they're just going to suck the offense out of the rink.
Yeah, that's fair. I think with Carolina, it's just a matter of when they get to the second and third round and they're playing teams that take advantage of the opportunities that they give them, or they break that forecheck. Carolina, they don't have that go-to guy. It could have been Martin Nettish, could have been Mikko Rantanen.
Right.
It's not going to be Logan Stankoven yet, but maybe someday. But
you don't think he's ready this year for that? Like, he's not that young.
He's still Calder eligible.
Shut up. Is he really?
Yeah.
We had him in the beginning of the season of our show. We talked about him as a possible candidate.
Yeah.
I thought that was the other Stankoven.
He was like one game away from not being eligible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a technicality, but it's not.
Yeah. So we got to give him time.
You got to break out at some point, right?
That's right. I mean, maybe it's Seth Jarvis. I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing that Carolina kind of seems to have going for them, at least right now, and I don't know if this is something they could carry through that long of a playoff run, is the whole us against the world, because they got someone that came in and was like, I don't want to be here. I want to leave. And it kind of, I mean, they got screwed over. Like, let's be honest. And part of that was on themselves. And Tulski made some choices that probably he regrets. But now the team is rallying behind that. So can they carry that? It'll be interesting to see.
New slogan for Carolina: you're all a bunch of jerks.
That's right. You guys are jerks.
Not wanting to play here.
A bunch of jerks got jerked. All right. So Vegas signs Adin Hill to a 6-year extension with a 6.25 AAV. Do we like it? And also need to recognize that now, since the start of the season, Vegas has locked in 5 key players to extension deals, which is very impressive work by GM Kelly McCrimmon. So certainly, again, not a team that's going out and making a ton of deadline moves, but they've just been locking down the good things they already have. So talk to me a little bit about this Hill deal. What do we think?
It's weird to have loyalty in Vegas kind of in the same sentence, but they are showing a lot of guys
know.
like, that like, okay, you're going to be part of the team beyond like a season or two, which is nice because Adin Hill, I think, is a gem. I think he's one of those guys that should have been on Team Canada at the Four Nations. And, he's kind of quietly put together another really good season. Like we know he can win a Stanley Cup. So he's already checked that part off. And, it's got to be easy to be a goaltender in Vegas because you're playing behind a really good defense and, a lot of forwards there do play on both sides of the rink. So
Yeah.
I like this move. Like I said, Vegas has to Vegas now is starting to kind of figure out, okay, which guys do we want to hang around for the long haul? And, Adin Hill is as good a choice as any.
I like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a steal. If you think about what some starting goaltenders are pulling in the NHL, to get Adin Hill for a little over 6 on a long-term pact, I think is a huge win. A great reward for him as well. It's like he wasn't exactly like a highly touted player out of junior. He's really built himself up into an NHL starter. So credit to Adin Hill there. But I agree. You look at Vegas and they've been in their window basically since birth. And they're continuing to do so. We talked about this on the show recently where, they trade all their first round draft picks, but maybe the chickens never come home to roost. I mean, they still have like Jack Eichel, Thomas Hertl, like that great defense core. They have a great goaltender in Adin Hill. Like I could see them contending for years to come. I don't think that's going to change. And again, that just maybe they build a little differently than other teams, but it's working.
Is Nicholas Hague the only homegrown guy they have on the roster right now?
He might be.
I think he might be.
That's a great question.
Which is like
Pavel Dorofiev,
second round pick.
Oh, there you go.
Dorofiev. He would be the other one. Yeah.
It's not a lot.
No.
And I know you build your team through the expansion draft, so technically those are homegrown players, but even the expansion draft, there's not a whole lot of guys still around there.
Yeah,
I know they got Riley Smith.
They got one back, but they got McNabb, and so either way, no, what they're doing in Vegas, it's sneaky concerning. And again, it almost feels like we haven't talked about them as much this year as we normally do, which makes me worry even more. They're just going to show up in the playoffs and ruin everybody's day. All right, well, we touched on this earlier a little bit about the struggles with the New Jersey Devils. GM Tom Fitzgerald said on the Kraken Knuckleheads podcast, a Vancouver podcast, which was interesting, that Dougie Hamilton obviously is done for the regular season. It didn't even sound optimistic about the playoffs. So kind of just digging through Hamilton's numbers. In the last 4 years he's been with Jersey, he has only played one fully healthy season. He is also the highest paid Devil on the team in terms of his cap hit at $9 million. So after this season, he has a modified no trade clause with a 10-team no trade list. So things start to open up a little bit in terms of what the Devils could consider doing. When you think about all these factors, is this a player that New Jersey should maybe start thinking about moving in the offseason to open up some room? And is that even possible? What do you think, Michael?
I think so. And, Dougie Hamilton's getting a little older. Like you mentioned, he's got quite the injury history where he can't stay healthy. But he's also on a Devils team now where there's some guys coming up and they are right-handed shots like Dougie, like Seamus Casey, Simone Nemec. Like they're going to want and need some ice time. I know you can't just give them that ice time, but at the same time, you do need to present them some opportunities to kind of work their way up into the top 4. Moving Dougie Hamilton definitely does that. And, to trade him, you're probably going to have to eat a lot of that contract because he's not a $9 million player anymore. But he's still a guy that if I'm a team that needs a right shot defenseman, and that list is pretty long because it seems like the whole world needs right shot defensemen, especially guys who can shoot the puck like Dougie can. So there'll be a market for him, and it might be the time to do it now.
What do you think, Ryan?
My first inclination is to hold on to him for the reason that the cap is going up, so a $9 million player is not really a $9 million player anymore. Like, he'll be more of an $8 million defenseman, which maybe it's still an overpay. And I see what you're saying about Seamus Casey and Simone Nemec. I'll even toss Luke Hughes into the mix here and say,
right,
I like having Dougie on the team in the short term, and it is only a couple more years, because then you can bring those young defensemen along at the proper pace. But also you have the advantage that those guys are on entry-level deals, or, in a year or two, they're going to be on either a bridge deal or, probably in the case of Luke Hughes, you probably just sign him to an 8-year deal because you know what you have and you like it. But I will also say, if you were to trade him, Mike, you got the gears moving in my head here.
Oh, here we go.
Would Chicago be a good place for him to land, where they've got the cap space, they need veterans?
They just got rid of Seth Jones. You want to bring in another Seth Jones?
Yes, exactly.
All the broken toys go to Chicago.
Right. I mean, maybe I'm just sort of like, who would accept him at this point with that injury history? It's like Chicago, they'll take anybody.
Yeah.
But if he's healthy, then you're getting a guy that, can play on your power play, can play big minutes, obviously has a lot of experience. Maybe not and again, like, his contract's not that long. No. So maybe it's worth it.
I like Ottawa as a destination. If you're gonna, if there's teams interested in them, like, they could use another shot on the back end. They've got some young guys that could definitely learn from Dougie Hamilton as well. Where's he from? St. Catharines? That's not too far either. So
all right, I like it. Well, I guess we'll see what happens with it. Here's a fun one. This is one I've been looking forward to talking about because there's just so many interesting ways that this can go. Mikko Rantanen making his return to Ball Arena for the first time as a member of the Stars on Sunday. And every time a player goes back, you have the discussion of what is a team going to do, and it gets even bigger when that player won a Stanley Cup with you. But this one is obviously very different and very tricky because they traded him to Carolina, but he didn't want to be there. So then he got himself traded to Dallas, which is a very big rival of Colorado and a team they are probably going to face in the first round. So people are not very happy with him. With all this in mind, should and will Mikko get the same welcome back video tribute moment that players who usually get when they win a cup with a team, or are things just too awkward for that now? Even Gabe Landeskog on Spit and Chicklets said they're going to go to dinner on Saturday night and make Mikko pay for it so they can air things out. So certainly everyone is aware that this is going to be weird. What do we think?
What did Mikko do to Colorado? Like, I don't like, he didn't.
He didn't want to leave.
He didn't want to leave.
I don't think people. I feel like people haven't. There's a strong camp of people who don't believe the surprise thing. They truly believe that Mikko wanted more, and the whole "I was shocked" is a little bit of a line. I'm
okay. So he wanted a contract. Like, he wanted to get paid as a superstar that he is.
Yeah.
And it's a guy that, when they won the cup, I don't have to tell you this, Katie, because you obviously know all this, but he led the playoffs in scoring. Like, you don't get a Stanley Cup without Mikko Rantanen. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you hear Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar and Jared Bednar, like, they did not want to lose Rantanen as well. So, it's not like he orchestrated his way out of town. Like, if this was Jack Eichel, then for sure, like, you're going, all right, does he deserve a tribute video in Buffalo because this guy never got us to the playoffs and he forced his way to Vegas and blah, blah, blah. But Rantanen wanted to stay there. Like, fine, he wanted to be paid, but, like, that's not.
Now I think it's like the Dallas thing maybe is what made it worse. Like, maybe if he was just in Carolina, like,
he's not yours anymore. Okay.
I know
where he goes after he leaves you. This is kind of like a spurned lover being like, well, you can't date that guy. It's like, it's not yours anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
You blew it.
There you go. Okay. So here's my thinking, and I will add a little bit if the Avs want to be cheeky. I definitely think you do it this game because, you can't do it during the playoffs.
Oh, gosh,
that's for sure. Like, just rip off the Band-Aid, do the tribute. He was a huge, important member of Colorado for so long. But if they want to have some fun, so they're doing the video, you show them, is getting drafted by the Avs, you show them hoisting the Stanley Cup. Then you do a little like Mikko Rantanen, I don't remember when he came into the league. Let's just say it was 2013 or something.
Yeah.
Or 2015. 2015, Mikko Rantanen 2015,
Connor McDavid
2024.
draft? No.
And then was that?
Was he the McDavid?
I don't even remember.
After?
Who knows? But you do the sort of Colorado dates, and then you show them on the screen. That would be hilarious to me.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I think at this opportunity, especially because we're not in the playoffs yet, but we know what might be coming, getting a little cheeky there and throwing in that funny chronological order of his career would definitely make fans happy. I'm not sure how Mikko would feel about it, but hey, it's not your problem anymore. He is officially your enemy. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, listen up, hockey players. You don't need to drop a fortune on sticks. You can snag a pro-level composite stick at Stix.com. That is Stix.com. So make sure you head over there and check it out. All right, boys, let's get into a little bit of rapid fire. We've talked about lots of new acquisitions at the deadline. They're all about the playoffs. That's where they really get to shine. So who will have a bigger playoff impact on their new team? Charlie Coyle or Brad Marchand? Michael?
Ooh, Marchand's going to have more points. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that.
Okay.
It's been a while since Charlie Coyle's been a productive guy. But for what Colorado needs and what Florida needs, I would argue that Coyle is more important to the Avs than Marchand's going to be to the Panthers. And, he gives Colorado, Coyle does, a number 3 center.
Right.
Obviously, Brock Nelson, I would argue, is going to have a bigger impact than all of the other two guys as well. But, just for what Colorado needed, Charlie Coyle kind of fills, checks off everything, really.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. Charlie Coyle will enable Colorado, especially when they're at home, to get some tremendous matchups where you can put Coyle on the other team's best center, and that frees up MacKinnon and Nelson to just kind of run wild. And it's a pick your poison scenario. So I think Coyle is it's sort of a utilitarian player for them that can play those shutdown minutes and really cause problems for the opposition.
Yeah, I mean, the Avalanche have needed depth, and if nothing else, he also allows other guys to play their correct roles in their correct spots, which I think is something huge. They needed that guy in the middle. But Marchand is certainly going to make an impact from his personality, if nothing else. Oh, yeah. And like you mentioned, Michael, he'll certainly be putting up points as well. All right, NHL is considering an 84-game schedule, maybe a possible September start. Lots of discussions that happen at the GM meetings. Do we like or dislike the thought of adding a couple games?
I like it because it seems like if they do 84 games, it would come at the expense of the preseason. Like we would have a shorter preseason. Yep. So I'm totally good with that because, GMs have talked about this a lot in the past. Like they don't need this many games to evaluate what is essentially 1 or 2 roster spots for most teams, right? Like, and they can figure it out. I would rather veterans not play more than like 1 or 2 preseason games because then you get injuries in what are essentially meaningless contests.
Yeah.
No, don't go longer. Go shorter. Contract the season.
Like shorten the preseason and the regular season.
Yeah, the best season in my mind was that COVID shortened season. I think we had 48 games. Was that the amount of games on tap? It felt like every game was weighted more. I think that's what the NFL does that the other big 4 sports don't do, which is they really put the emphasis on every single game that it matters. It's life or death. Lose this game, you might be out of the playoffs. I think if the NHL could get closer to that, which would kind of get rid of the dog days of February and January, I think it'd be perfect.
It would be interesting. And I don't know what I think about a September start. Like I like the idea of like getting kind of like back on schedule. Like I know we are basically there now when we were getting like these really drawn out Stanley Cup finals into the middle of the summer, but I don't know if you necessarily need to kick it off any earlier than October, but we'll see. All right, pick one. Which NHL team gets the harshest criticism from fans and media? Either or, just who can't win, who's just never going to be away,
You know,
and no one's gonna be happy.
yeah, for this season at least, I don't know how you pick any other team than Vancouver.
That's fair.
Like, I don't know if you listen to Vancouver radio or just go on Twitter and just
Oh,
type
Lord.
like
yeah.
nuts, but
Stay
you know,
away from it.
yeah, it is toxic and it can't be fun to play there. I wonder if this is kind of contributing to why Brock Besser might not re-sign there, or some of the issues that are kind of leaking into the dressing room. But
Yeah.
it's tough. I don't think enough people realize just how tough it is in Vancouver, because we talk to our Canucks site editor all the time, and he's just like, it's brutal. It really is brutal here.
It's like aging him 10 years just being in that locker room. It sucks the life out of you.
Yeah, Jim Rutherford is actually only 28 years old. People don't realize it.
Just that Vancouver media. All right, what do you think, Ryan?
I like that answer, Mike, but I'm gonna go a different way. I'm gonna say the New York Islanders, and I feel part of it is because they don't leak. Like Lou Lamoriello runs a very tight ship, so like he's not currying favor with like the TV insiders.
True.
Also, they're like the other New York team. They are Long Island's team. They are not like Manhattan's team. So there is that sort of rivalry, and obviously, like Manhattan is the big media market. So I feel like the Islanders never really catch a break, because whatever they do, people are like, oh, that's Lou Lamoriello. He's set in his ways. It's like, yeah, he's also like a Stanley Cup winning legend. That has like changed the game and started a lot of other people's careers. Like Brian Burke probably never, gets into management without Lou Lamoriello, dating back to their Providence College days.
Yeah.
So I think the Islanders tend to get the short end of things a lot of the times for various circumstances.
Also, Potvin sucks.
Also, what?
That's great. Potvin
sucks.
Right.
Oh, man. I know. You know what? The team that always stands out to me for this answer, and I think it varies, especially right now, because they are kind of going through a little bit of a change, but it's Montreal. And I know that's just because it's like the mecca for hockey in a lot of ways. But when I think about players like who have left there and been like, oh, wow, I just feel so much like I lost 20 pounds. Like Jonathan Drouin is one that I think about. It's just a lot of pressure. Maybe it's not necessarily a criticism thing as much as it is just an expectation thing. But I feel like that can be a tough place to play if you're not hitting it at your perfect stride.
They just care so much. That's the real thing. Is they have such high expectations. Yeah. They want the players to care as much as the fans do, which will never happen.
No, that's hard to do. All right, how about this? Would you do this? The Utica Comets GM traded his son for nothing. Will MacKinnon, son of Dan MacKinnon, was traded to Cleveland for future considerations. If you were a GM, would you do this to your son? Also, how mad was his wife? She'd be like, go home, get your son back tomorrow.
You know what? I was looking into this. I was looking into the standings, and I think I know why this trade happened. Utica is last place in the division. They're not going to make the playoffs. Cleveland's a playoff team. So I think he actually did his son a favor.
Okay. He's helping him out.
I've been to Utica and Cleveland. Hilariously, Cleveland's an upgrade. Okay, so
it is true. I've also been both places, and yes, there are a lot of places that are an upgrade from Utica. No offense to the Comets fans out there. We love it. All right, story time. We had one of our hockey news reporters talk about how he missed the post game because he couldn't get to the locker room. He couldn't find it. He got turned around. He got locked out. We have all been there. At least I know I have. So have you ever gotten lost in any arena getting to the locker room? Briefly tell us your story.
Yeah, many, many times. And generally it's because the regular elevator, which is always the service elevator for reporters, is either so jammed or it's out of service that they're like, just take this stairwell down and then get off here and then find the white door that has no label on it. And you're just like, I don't know where I'm going. And generally speaking, it's like the whole rink is emptying out at that point. So you're generally mixed with fans. And it's happened to me at Joe Louis Arena. It's happened to me at PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh. Basically, it's happened everywhere. One horrendous story was I was in. Here's the rule of thumb: is follow another reporter. except
Yes.
if that reporter is not going down to the dressing room and is just leaving for the night, which
Oh no.
got me locked out of a rink. So yeah, this is nightmare fuel for me. For real, like for weeks or years, I would always get that, that nightmare where I couldn't find my way down.
Michael is fully triggered by this
It
experience
really,
question.
Totally.
What about you, Ryan?
So my worst one actually happened before a game. I was going to Oshawa to see Steven Stamkos play against John Tavares in junior, Sarnia versus Oshawa. And I had never been there before. There was a blizzard on the way there. I get there and I get my press pass from Will Call, but nobody knows where I'm supposed to go. And I didn't know at the time that Oshawa's rink, which is fairly new, was built without a press box. So I'm walking around and I'm like, hey, I have a press pass. Where am I supposed to go? And they're like, oh, maybe over there, over there. I ended up on the catwalk above the arena looking down at the opening face-off. And I'm like, this is not where I'm supposed to be.
Lord.
And eventually I ended up sitting somewhere in the stands with Sarnia's goaltending coach. And now I know that they just tell you, it's like, just stand wherever. It doesn't matter. But that was the one where I was like, oh my God, like this is terrible. Like I'm late. I'm literally watching the game from the like a bird's eye view from the catwalk. This is terrible.
Yeah. And so for reporters, it's even sometimes worse. It's not necessarily about getting to the locker room. It's about like where your spot in the rink is, because more and more rinks are just getting rid of those positions and popping in seats. So a couple places, the one that sticks out is in Boston. You have to basically crawl under the stands in order to get to your little spot where it's just a tiny cutout for you and a camera guy. But then you have to either choose to crawl back, and it is not like a comfortable crawl. It is like I put my hand in beer. It's horrible. But then you have to otherwise go up, do the whole concourse thing with the fans in between periods. And I got locked in a stairwell there once. It was just banging on every door, hoping that someone would let me in, and I didn't know where I was. The rule of thumb is just, if you can, stay in the bowl and navigate your way down through the bowl, because then at least you know where you are. Like, don't get into the bowels of the arena, because you will never be found. And I've kind of tried to follow that rule of thumb. But yeah, obviously we could all talk about this one for a while. Very triggering. We've all had experiences. Shout out to Derek. I know he will not be making that mistake again. And so it happens. We all learn, and you'll remember it forever. But that does it for this episode of the Hockey News Big Show. Make sure, as always, to follow us on social media to keep up to date. Join us every Friday now for our top 8 contenders list. But we will be back with more hockey news discussions in action next week. For Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy, I'm Katie Gaus, and we will see you all next time.